Calling our workshop to order at 4:31 p.m. Thank you all for coming out today to get the updates from Stantec. We did ask last year that they would go back and review some things and bring us some additional information back for us to reconsider moving forward in regards to funding our stormwater. Please note that we're not voting on anything official today, other than just trying to send out, verify for the trim report, but we're not voting on any particular funding today. Okay, so don't think that we're voting on any funding. So just wanted to remind all the commissioners and the public of that as well. Okay, we're getting our report and then just saying yes that or no that we can send that out. So we will, have to affirm that, but we're not voting on anything official today. So no matter what you hear on the news, that today's meeting is not about stormwater per se. All right.
Thank you, Mayor. Today we have with us from Stantec, Kelly Westover and Peter Napoli. We've been working with them a couple of months on trying to fine-tune the stormwater rates and making sure we're as accurate as we possibly can be. Today is just a workshop to come back to the commission with some directives you gave to us almost a year ago about looking at vacant land, possibly doing another tier, also with probably a report of how we can put this in place for the next five-year plan. I think I remember Mayor saying, and a couple other commissioners saying, that when you bring us something, let's let this be something that's going to be long-lasting, standing for a while, so that we can continue to make sure stormwater is funded. So I think we may have we'll hit all of these today. And so I'm going to introduce now Kelly Westover and Peter Napoli from Stantec.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Nice to see you all again. Thank you.
Welcome back.
So we have today a presentation, as the city manager mentioned, to address those items, those follow-up items that we heard from you all last year. So we're going to highlight some potential fee structure changes regarding residential tiers, as well as the vacant fee. We're going to look at how we can make your fund self-sustainable. We're going to talk about that in the revenue sufficiency analysis. And then we're also going to talk about how that looks regarding customer impacts with the fee summary and then an overall timeline. So the first topic is residential tiers. So if you remember a few years ago, we adopted a fee structure consisting of 2 residential single-family tiers. One of the components that we've looked at is how could we make this more equitable for parcels that have more impervious area. So the more impervious area generates more stormwater runoff that the city then has to manage in their system. So we looked at putting in a 3rd tier for those larger properties, just over the breakpoint for the equivalent residential unit, and it would start at 4,000 square feet. So parcels with 4,000 square feet greater than that will be put into a separate tier. And this chart here demonstrates the first 2 tiers, those existing tiers that you have. Tier 1, which is from 400 square feet to 2,900 square feet of impervious area. And then we broke Tier 2 into 2 separate tiers. So Tier 2 would go from 2,901, just over that 2,900 square feet, to just under 4,000 at 3,999. And then we would have a separate 3rd tier starting at 4,000 square feet all the way through the largest single-family residential parcels. So that was the first modification that we're suggesting regarding the fee structure. The second component is relative to the vacant fee. If you remember, we generated a vacant fee that accounts for 0.29% of the stormwater runoff on an impervious area parcel. And the current fee is $40.54 per 3,900 square feet of gross area on the parcel. And we looked at a 20% reduction to that vacant fee, taking into consideration that there were concerns with larger parcels being charged a certain amount. So we're recommending a 20% reduction to that vacant fee in the next year, and that would bring it down to $32.43 per 3,900 square feet of gross area.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Napoli. Nice to meet you all in person for the first time.
You can take it off if you want.
Take the microphone off? Okay. I'll just push it up a little bit. There we go. So I'll be going over a few slides that pertain to the financial forecast, the long-term plan for the city stormwater fund, and some customer impacts, and also some instructions on how a taxpayer can figure out where they would end up in the three-tier system and what bill that they can expect to pay based on their property. So this first slide here just summarizes the first year of the forecast model, which is fiscal year 2024, which you're currently in the budget process to establish the fiscal year 2024 budget. We have the estimated expenses and revenues per staff, per your finance department. On the left-hand side, we have the total expenses summarized. They're about $1.9 million for the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. About $1 million of that is related to personnel. About $600,000 is related to operating, and about $250,000 is related to an outstanding debt that the Stormwater Fund is responsible for paying. On the right-hand side, we'll show you that the revenues that are currently available to the fund are about $1.5 million for the stormwater fee and about $36,000 for miscellaneous other revenues.
Is that based on our current structure or based on what you just showed us before with the 4,000, the new tier?
Yeah, so that's based on, I believe, that's actually before any increase, but it takes into account the structural changes. So there's no increase to the actual rates, but there's the addition of the tier 3 and the reduction of the vacant.
So does this include tier 3 or no?
Yes. And what we'll show you in the financial forecast is an additional increase onto that rate as well. So, but going forward, this slide here just summarizes some of the key inputs and assumptions that are in our 5-year forecasting model. First off, assessment revenue is funding the operations and maintenance. Currently, there's no assumptions for funding capital through assessment revenues. The assumption is that impact fees, grants, and other funding sources are used to fund the necessary capital for the Stormwater Fund. There are no further internal transfers from other funds to support the enterprise fund for the stormwater. So this is assuming the stormwater revenues funds stormwater expenses, and there's no other assistance. We have salaries and wages increased at 3% a year, operating costs increased at 2.5% a year, and we also have the goal of working up to a 3-month emergency reserve for the fund by fiscal year 2026. So this snapshot here comes from our financial model. It's what we call our control panel or dashboard, but essentially it summarizes the results of a certain plan that we have input for the rates and the rate revenues. So currently we have a plan, a 5-year plan. You'll see that blue row there with the stormwater fee plan. Those are the increases we have planned over 5 years. You start with 0% in this previous year because there was no increase to rates. And then in fiscal year 24, we're proposing or recommending a 10% increase to rates. Fiscal year 25, an additional 10%. And then fiscal years 26, 27, and 28, more of an inflationary increase of 5%. So this would achieve a self-sufficient stormwater fund that pays for its operations and maintenance without any additional assistance from other funds. Previously, there were transfers from the sanitation fund to help support the stormwater fund. This is a 2-year phased rate increase rather than 20% all at once. It's broken out over 2 years to kind of reduce the upfront impact to taxpayers. And then it achieves a kind of a steady state where you can just use 5% inflationary increases to keep up with the rising cost of service for the stormwater fund, because equipment and supplies and maintenance, et cetera, the stormwater fund is subject to inflation each year, and the cost of service goes up each year. It's also achieves, you'll see on the left-hand side, that graph there, those blue bars are that fund balance that we're projecting for the enterprise fund. You'll see that black line, that's the target. That's the 3-month reserve balance, essentially your emergency reserve, your rainy day savings account for the stormwater fund. And you're achieving that fund balance by fiscal year 2026. So this chart here summarizes the impacts to taxpayers with both the 10% increase and the structure changes. So you'll see in the very first row, we have the vacant fee. Currently, per 3,900 square feet of gross area, a vacant parcel pays $40.54. After the 10% increase and the structural changes, they'll still see a decrease of $4.81 annually per 3,900 square feet, and that's a decrease of 40 cents per month. So you'll see it goes to $35.73. The next row is the non-single family fee, which is non-residential, and it's assessed per 3,900 of impervious area on the property. Currently, they pay $139.78 per 3,900. That's the ERU definition, and they would be paying $154 after the changes, which is an annual change of $14 and a monthly change of $1.19. Single-family Tier 1 currently pays $71.29 if they fall within the range of 400 square feet to 2,900 square feet of impervious area. They would be increased to $83 a year, which is an $11 impact a year and just about $1 a month. Single-family Tier 2, so the square footage range 2,901 to 3,999, currently pays $139.78. They would be increased to $154. It's an annual increase of $14 and a monthly change of $119. And then the third tier, which is new, currently the third tier, those property owners are paying the Tier 2 rate, so it's $139.78 because currently you only have 2 tiers. Since the third tier would be added, they would fall into that category if they're above 4,000 square feet of impervious area, so their bill would increase by $91 to $231. And that's an annual change, and the monthly change would be about $7.60. So we've included the step-by-step process for figuring out where your property, if you own a single-family home, where it falls within the 3-tier rate structure and what you could expect to pay. So step 1, you would start by going to the Bay County Property Appraiser's website. Step 2, there's a option for property search on the left-hand side. You'd click that. Then you could search for your property by owner name, parcel ID, if you happen to know the parcel ID, or address, which is probably the simplest way. Step 4, once you bring up your parcel card, you can scroll down to the section titled Building Data and add the total area from the building. Step 5, you would scroll down to the section titled Extra Features, and you would add the area from impervious features. So not all extra features are impervious. There's things like fences that are listed there. The fence doesn't block rainwater from being absorbed, but things like driveways, walkways, brick pavers, sheds, etc., they would all be listed under that section, and their area would be added to the building area. And the addition of those 2 areas, you would find where you lie within the 3-tier system. This is a screenshot from an example property, and as you can see, they scrolled down to their building data section, and the total area for this single-family home in this section is 2,842 square feet. Then in the bottom of the page, they scroll down to their extra features, and they have a driveway that's measured at 912 square feet. So you would take the 2,842 from the home, the 912 feet from the driveway, you'd add them together, and it would give you impervious area of 3,754. That falls between the 2,900 to 399, 999, which is tier 2, so they can expect to pay $154 a year for their stormwater bill. One thing to highlight is that in the first part of this equation, building area, if the building is 2 stories, we subtract out the area that's associated with the second story. So in the property appraiser's database, they break out each building into what they call sub-areas. And for anything over the first story, they call a finished upper story, and it's identified as such, and the square footage is identified. We remove that from the square footage of the property so that it's not included in the impervious area, because the footprint of the building is all that counts towards impervious. And then with that, I'll hand it back over to Kelly.
So just in summary here, part of our recommendations from what we've heard to come back with this year is to address the equity within the single-family residential class, which is done by potentially adding the 3rd tier beginning in fiscal year '24. Another concern was the larger parcel vacant fees, and with that, we're recommending a 20% decrease in the vacant fee. And then regarding the rates over a period of time, I think last year there were some comments about one large increase was not responsible for the community. And as such, our financial model this year includes all the new property appraiser information and the current parcels, so that was incorporated within our analysis, as well as your FY24 budget, as well as these rate structure changes. And with that reduction in the sanitary sewer transfer to be sustainable, we're looking at 10% in '24, 10% in '25, and then 5% thereafter. So for the commission's consideration would be a 5-year rate resolution where you could look at a 5-year sustainable plan without any transfers from other funds and incorporating the fee structure modifications.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I have one more slide, just a potential timeline for consideration this evening. So July 25th, that's us here tonight at the commission workshop. On August 8th, we could have a public meeting to consider an initial resolution to make those fee structure changes and with the rates, as well as authorizing staff to mail notices to the parcels with those changes. August 11th, we would mail those notice letters out to the community and publish a notice within the paper about the final assessment resolution hearing, which would then be held on September 13th. October 1st, those rates would become effective, and they would cover October 1st of '23 through the end of September in '24, and that would be noticed on the tax collector's bill that would be sent out in November. And that's it, Mayor and Commissioners. So thank you very much for listening to us this evening, and we're happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
So a couple things that kind of came up last year was, and I know this is difficult because this is something new for the Bay County Appraiser Office to keep, I know they already keep track of it, but there were they found quite a few houses that the impervious area calculation was inaccurate, and a lot of them was the 2-story buildings. And that's one of the things that concerns me with this. The other thing I wanted to verify is the cutoff date of when the pervious area calculation for your house, I think it's in sometime in this month, isn't it? Where that's the cutoff date, and whatever that is, that's what will be calculated for starting 1 October, right?
It's whatever date we obtain the property appraiser database and do the calculations to update each parcel's impervious area. And that's usually July 1st, sometime in July.
So if it showed vacant property on that date, then that's what they're going to get charged, even if they built a house somewhere in between that and October.
Right, the authoritative database for your impervious area is the property appraiser information.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the last question I have is, if I calculate it right, 1 acre of vacant land, it's about $399 with a new calculation. I don't know, expect you to know that off the top of your head, but if you don't mind, let me know if I calculate that right or not.
Okay.
So just trying to figure out easy numbers. So I'm thinking it's just under $400 an acre if I calculate it right.
Yeah, we can get back to you on that. I don't want to state the wrong number.
Any additional questions?
I have a question. How many houses over 4,000 square foot are there in Lynn Haven?
Yeah, I think she had it on her slide. Yeah,
How many total though?
it's on the slide.
Not square, it's impervious. Square
Yeah,
feet,
4,000 square foot.
Yeah, it
I
was
can
on-
go back
it
to
was on-
it.
Why don't you
Yeah.
go back to the slide?
If you go back to that slide.
Yes, sir. It is right there, 1,637 parcels.
Oh,
Okay. And you're gonna raise them by like $100 and some, right?
It would be
Yeah, like $91, yeah.
91.
99.
91 per year.
$91 a year, $7.60 a month.
That still doesn't get to the variance on where the expenditures are. We're looking at it's like $300,000 difference right now, isn't it?
Correct. Well, the idea is that I think by the time we get to year 5, we will have it balanced out. So that's the idea, is that we progressively reach that balance. So we're having to borrow $300,000 this year or $500,000 this year, but based on this 5-year plan, once we get to year 5, then we won't have to borrow anymore. So because this year we didn't go up at all on the plan. So this year when we first adopted it, we said we'll go year by year, or we'll try it for the first year, and then the second year when it came around for us to do something, we didn't vote to increase it, which is why we sort of suggested, hey, let's let them bring back a plan that we can say, yes, let's go with this. That way we won't go year by year and get cold feet and not go up on something and have to continue to borrow.
We're seeing dollar amounts right now. What are the dollar amounts going to be in year 5? I know we talk percentages, but I mean, give me a number. How much is a single family 2,900 going to be paying in 5 years from now?
We can do that. We can prepare a rate chart that has these particular classes and each fiscal year.
I think people want to see dollars and cents before they see percentages. Like, I'm paying $90 more this year, and I'm going to be paying $300 more in 5 years. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I just think we just need to be more, just put the dollars out there to people. So
10% next year would be another $23.10, and then another, well, you had to add to that, and then 5%, and then 5%, so probably another $75 at the end of the time.
And I'm assuming, this is just me assuming, that if we feel like, that we're charging too much for single family tier 3, that we could take some of that and roll that in a single family tier 2 and still get that same equivalence though. Like if we say, okay, hey, it's, $91 is too much, let's take $10 away from single family tier 3 and add $10 to single family tier 2, that we would still get the same number in the end.
They'd have to justify that as far as if it's
Right.
fair for, that's would be part of your analysis. I mean, that would, we wouldn't sit here and say, okay, this is what's equitable and fair. Even
Right.
that's what the consultants would have to do.
I get it, but I'm gonna get phone calls about what would have been fair, so then I got to be able to justify to them, like, well, who? Because they're gonna say, well, you're the one that's voting on it, right?
we're voting on it, yeah.
So
Just another scenario is if we did single family tier 1 400 square foot to 2,500 square foot, and they did 2,500 square foot to 39 square foot, would that capture more in the net? I mean, I know you guys have looked at the scenarios, but
So when we sat down and started doing these 3 different tiers, changing those by 100 square foot or 500 square, it doesn't make a significant difference to change anything there. That is about the best representation you can have. And that one slide that Kelly was on where it was like 48%, of Lynn Haven parcels were in tier 1, and then I think 26 in tier 2 and 23, and that's a very good show of the distribution of what it will
I
be.
just want to be here at the head of the table saying that, just in case, you know.
Sure.
Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have a few. First one, is this model set up to where if we were able to raise money in a different way, that we could offset the amount it would cost? For example, if we were to somehow get creative and raise $300,000 next year, could we offset
So
how much we charge the citizens?
in raising money for an enterprise fund, it would have to be outside funding such as grants. And whenever we got with Kelly, and then we had them take out all the HMGP projects as well as the equipment that's being funded by impact fees. So it doesn't skew any of the results that they modeled here for you. So it's not showing, other funded projects or other funded equipment. It's letting all of this be the operating, the salaries, everything it has to be to run the day-to-day operations. So outside funding sources for this enterprise fund, it's not like you can go get sponsorships or something like you can for the general fund for recreation and stuff like that. It would just be grant funded or what a non-ad valorem or a fee would bring in.
Okay. And then my other question is, even with the decrease in the vacant land fee, for example, I'll just give an example. The amount of property that my house is on, if I had a vacant lot, I'd still be paying more money than if I had a house. You know what I'm saying? So and the whole point of stormwater runoff is running off of impervious. So it's going to be hard to justify that much money per square foot, even with a 20% decrease. The amount that you're paying per square foot is more for vacant property than it is for impervious property. So
I think last time, whenever you all brought us the actual the actual number of parcels that were so many square feet, that it wasn't very many parcels that were large square footage. It wasn't like we had 500 parcels that were, 10 acres or something like that in the area. It was very few parcels. They broke down the numbers in the previous presentation that identified how many vacant parcels. Now, last time, if I recall, was there a cap on the vacant parcel? So I think there's still a cap on the vacant parcel. So you're not going to pay up to so much, if I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a cap on there.
I think the cap's 5 acres, isn't it?
Yes.
We didn't change that.
Yeah, so there's still a cap. So if you have 100 acres, you're not going to be charged for 100 acres. You're going to be charged for 5 acres, because we are taking into consideration that 95 acres is still helping us with stormwater in some sense because it's vacant.
if someone has 100 acres in Lynn Haven, I want to go see it because I just want to take a picture.
They might. We'll hear about new housing development coming pretty soon, probably. And I don't know. I'm just joking. I don't know about anything coming. Any other questions for? Yes, sir.
I just have one question. By adding this tier, do we have any idea how much extra revenue that brings in?
We do.
Yeah, I believe it was about 100,000.
Okay. Thanks.
Any additional questions?
Now, just a quick for my knowledge, because I'm dumber than a rock. Where do you find your impervious square footage in the property appraiser site? Because I'm on it right now, looking at my property.
Yeah. So if you scroll down on the property page here, here's a screenshot from the actual site. There is a section titled Building Data, and that's for the main structure of your house. There's a category labeled Total Area.
Yep.
So that's the area that's air conditioned and non-air conditioned. So it includes the garage, includes the patio,
600?
and then you would add any extra features that are impervious in nature. So certain extra features aren't impervious, and we make sure we don't include those in the calculation. Only the features that create runoff.
So the total area, I see the total area, and then do we add, is that including the driveway as well?
No, the total
You have to
area.
go down and add drive.
Yeah, you'd have to
wherever
add
it's-
the driveway from the extra
Yep.
features section.
Because I'm looking at my individual property, and you know, you look at it like, and normal people would look at it and say, oh, well, my property is under that, why am I paying tier 2?
Right.
And you gotta go down and look at drive, walk, so, just so we know how to explain it to people when they come to us, because people are gonna come to us with questions.
Yeah.
So would it include patios, pools?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. Anything that can't soak up the water. Yep. Any additional questions?
One more. I don't know.
All right, this your last one.
Typically, the property appraiser only redoes their calculations whenever a pool permit's pulled, right? Or is it like a periodic type thing? Because I'm thinking about people that added a patio or something next year. Would it be part of this? You know, they would have to probably pull a permit for that patio, and that's when they'd go out and remeasure it. Or is it just like a periodic thing if someone didn't pull a permit?
So here in Bay County, yes, when they pull a permit, and then they do an audit, say they do an audit like every year on your property, of course, short staffing, everything with the county. But keep in mind, if we were to add that employee to verify the property appraiser's data, just say a salary of $40,000, a truck to go out, the fuel, the benefits, insurance. So what we would make up in the difference from the errors from the Bay County information to us, we would not even pay for that employee to check. And I mean, the school board, other municipalities, they all go by the same data as well. The county is the only one that is verifying, the information from the parcel.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, because we got 27 minutes to the next meeting. So before we adjourn, we'd just like to, just talk for a moment. One of the things to keep in mind, and I know because we have new commissioners, and it was like 2 years ago when we made some of these decisions or had some of these things come up. So, of course, enterprise fund has to be self-funding is the idea. Stormwater is not self-funded. Stormwater initially was on our water bill, so we all paid stormwater. So it's not like the stormwater fund was something new or the assessment was a new fee altogether because it was already being charged. We just took it from the water bill to make it a separate assessment, ideally to generate more funding. But it's always having to borrow from sanitation. And so, of course, we know that eventually we're going to have to spend millions of dollars to expand our sanitation department or sewage. And so if we continue to borrow from that, then we're not going to have enough money in the bank in order to expand the way we need to. So hard decisions are having to be made. 2 years ago when we made the decision to implement this stormwater assessment, there were 50 people out here that told us not to do it, right? I mean, so it was a very hard decision to do that. However, since doing that, stormwater has greatly improved throughout the city of Lynn Haven. So I believe that's one of the best decisions we made as a commission in the past 2 years was implementing the stormwater assessment. We did not raise the rate last year because of inflation, people coming off the pandemic, and so we didn't want to add an extra burden to individuals. But we didn't raise it with the hope that whenever something was brought back to us that we would be able to say, yes, let's stick to this for the next 3 years, 5 years, however long it was proposed, so that we could make sure that stormwater becomes self-funded in a true enterprise fund and stop borrowing from sanitation because we're robbing from Peter to pay Paul to give back to John. And so we can't continue to do that. Now, I know there's some other decisions that we have to make too with other rates, but right now I would just like for us to, of course, we're not making a vote today. We're going to do that in other workshops. But as we look at these various funds, these various rates, just look at it for what it is one at a time. Each individual rate, each individual fund for what it's having to do within itself. Although we know it's impacting people comprehensively, each one operates in a different setting. And so let's try to just focus on that. So as we're looking at stormwater, you're going to get, feedback from the public, emails, phone calls, etc. Just remember that the idea is so that we can have a long-term plan so that stormwater can continue to be funded. If not, we're not going to be able to continue our maintenance. And we've really just begun on what we're trying to do with stormwater. We've just really been doing the maintenance, which is really have grave improvement just by digging the ditches. We haven't got to the dredging yet, and there's many other projects that we need to get to that are still 3 to 5 years down the road. I would encourage you that if you have not looked at the Stormwater Master Plan, to take a look at that. It's online. Of course, it's updated per some issues that we've had with stormwater, but take a look at that to see what the vision is for stormwater for the next 10 years, what we're trying to do over the next 10 years with stormwater. And this funding, this stormwater assessment, this funding, the goal of that is to get us to that, there's no structural flooding in the city of Lynn Haven. So that's one of my goals and hopes, is that we won't have any structural flooding. So when people come to us and say, I paid a stormwater assessment fee, but there's still water in my yard, I'm sorry. Is there water in your home? No, there's no water in my home. Okay, great, right? I don't like water standing in my yard either. That's why I leave the trash can out there a couple of days, right? And then when the water goes down, I go pull the trash can in and we're fine. However, our ultimate goal for stormwater is to make sure that no one has a flooding home. Which is why they're focusing on the Colorado area, because there are homes over there that have water to intrude in it. Because there's nothing harder when it's raining and somebody calls you and they're upset and you got to go stand in the living room with rain boots on because it's wet, right? Yeah. And all you can do is this: I'm sorry. That's all you can say, is that I'm sorry.
And it can also affect the FEMA map. You know, if we're not taking care of it, and that means more people in flood zones, which means they have to get flood insurance, which is more money. So. But
so I just want to give a little background, because I know everybody hasn't been here for the past 2-3 years as we've talked about this tug of war with stormwater, that it's not just another fee that we're trying to add on to our citizens. It is something that we're trying to alleviate as an issue in our community, because not only is it just about structural flooding, standing water, even when it comes to travel, we're having to shut down roads, and it becomes pretty dangerous when water is just standing there in the road if we don't have adequate flow for the stormwater to get out. So that's all I wanted to say. Any other discussion, conversation, questions about the stormwater before we get ready to close out?
I was just wondering if we're going to open up for public, if they had any questions.
Hold on.
Thanks.
Can we get a copy of this?
Yes, ma'am, you will.
Study
You
it?
sure will.
And also, so the downsides, if we do nothing, is we continue to borrow money, and at a slower pace, we do not fix the problems, or we fix them at a slower pace. Downsize, if we do not do this, and...
The downside that I've always seen is that eventually we're going to have a poop problem, because we're not going to be able to fund sanitation. And I don't want anybody calling me about poop.
I think it's important to discuss, both sides, so that
Well,
if we do nothing, what will happen?
if we do nothing, we're going to be back here next year asking Stan Tech to make another presentation on what are the rates going to be, because we did nothing last year. So I think we took a bold move in initiating something, but we didn't do anything, and it put strain on this department, the stormwater department, where they're having to cut back on projects that are being done. So in essence, we've probably delayed 1 year to 2 years on projects that were on slate to be done because we didn't do anything. So the money that we're having to go ask Representative Griffiths for, Senator Trumbull for, some of that money we could have in the bank if we would have done something, or be able to say, hey, this is a matching fund that we have. We're asking you for $750,000, but we have $300,000 that we can match that with if you give it to me. But we don't have that because we didn't do anything. So if we don't do anything, we're just going to keep delaying the process of improving the infrastructure of our city, and it's going to impact the other areas as well.
Or you can pay $1 a month more on your bill.
There you go. That's right. All right. Commissioner Ward.
I was just going to say that, if we kick the can down the road, just like the can was kicked to us, then you're just going to make it worse for the residents and the commission in the future. Yeah. And this is a problem that we accumulated over the years, and it's painful, but I feel it needs to be done.
And I have talked to former commissioners about why they made the decision not to really address stormwater like we've had to do. And so former commissioners said that at that time they were focusing on safety and security. Right. So they wanted to make sure that we had a strong police force and we had a good fire department for safety and security, and that they had to choose between standing water in the yard versus a great response time for police and fire. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because my thought is that we have top 10 safest city in the state of Florida, so we have great safety and security now, and so now we can shift our focus to other parts of our city, like stormwater, utilities, so that we don't have to put that burden 10 years down the road on someone else, that maybe this is our time to take on this and to handle that. Any questions from the public? No questions? Great. All right. Thank you all so much. I will see you all at 5:30. Meeting adjourned.